Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Noble with Nobu, the All-American Shaman. Nobu, how are you doing today?
Good. Thanks as always for having me, brother.
Thanks as always for being here. Today, we're going to be talking about the secrets of the universe, in particular, the famous quote from Nikola Tesla regarding such secrets. And maybe, Nobu, you could recount your favorite quote from that brilliant man.
If you wish to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of frequency and vibration.
What's the distinction and what are the similarities there?
So, people often think more of frequency when it comes to ethereal states of energy. And I didn't say matter there, I said energy. Whereas people tend to think more of vibration in terms of matter, the oscillatory rate of molecules within a substance. So, but I'm going to say this from my perspective, frequency and vibration are essentially just pointing at the same thing. They're pointing at the rate at which something is experiencing existence, whether that be as a waveform or a particle.
Yeah, I mean, thinking as far as like different dimensions, consciousness can kind of perceive. We have the world around us, and they have the light spectrum, and there's certain wavelengths of light that we can't perceive with our own eyes, the ones that we can. And with Nikola Tesla, he was brilliant, and I think a divergent thinker in a lot of different ways because he thought about these different dimensions and different frequencies that you normally cannot perceive in any way. He was able to think about them in ways and then use like mathematics and experimentation and electricity. So maybe you can kind of talk about his approach and how it ties into shamanism as well. I know that with shamanic work, you're kind of working in these maybe unseen dimensions to then bring them into the awareness of the folks you work with. Do you have any kind of linkages there?
So the first thing I would say about Tesla in terms of his way of going about getting to where he got, right? His destination is he was very much particular is the most polite word I could use. But he was very anal about his everyday actions, whether that be how many times he walks around his building before entering into his home, you know, what he ate every day, the clothes he wear. He, so to the outside perspective, this seems like kind of like insanity. Like you're eating the same thing every day, you're wearing the same clothes. Why are you doing this? But genius is hitting a mark that other people can't even see yet. That's why they're often labeled as crazy, or their works are, historically speaking, labeled as witchcraft or woo woo or nonsense, is because the frequency at which he was operating, the level of truth, kind of similar to angels in the Bible saying, be not afraid when they enter the presence of humans. He was so brilliant, so bright, emphasis on the light above my head right now, and that other people could not even they could not connect the dots because the jump from where they were at to where he was at was so vast that, again, most people couldn't pick up what he was putting down. So as far as the relationship between that and shamanism, is a lot of, and we just talked about this before, we alluded to this, is a lot of shamanism is done in secret, in private, and in solitude. Whether it be, you call it meditation, prayer, just arduous thinking, mental states, and navigating different dimensions of thought. It requires a lot of time alone and in a, I don't want to say sanitary environment, so to speak, in the scientific sense, but as I was saying earlier about how he would wear the same clothes, do the same things, he had his patterns in place. As any good scientist knows, you have to be able to control your variables when you're conducting an experiment. And when one is conducting experiments on themselves or in more non-tangible ways where there's not peer review and there's not a clinical environment, you have to become the best guinea pig possible as well for your work. You know, both as the receiving end of your work and also as the creator, right? Because he has to make sure that he has a consistent input and output in order to continue on his trajectory.
And so, yeah, you're mentioning inputs and outputs and keeping like a controlled, kind of more experimental environment. It's cool to, I didn't realize that he took that scientific and kind of laboratory approach outside the laboratory as well to his own life, because I guess he was an embodiment and a manifestation of these theories that he was experimenting with, and might as well keep that um, very controlled and able to deduce what things are having the impacts on the outputs. And if you have too many variables in your day-to-day life, I could see that being hard to determine which things are impactful and which ones are not. So maybe we could focus a little bit more on the concept of coherence that was kind of coming up to me as well when we were talking about different energies and frequencies and vibrations. And you mentioned that folks were not even really able to comprehend these things that he was talking about. And it kind of got me thinking, like, maybe he was vibrating at this crazy high frequency and like intelligence and intellect and perception level, and then other folks are maybe a little bit lower. Is there kind of a correlation or causation around the energy and frequency of somebody's consciousness, of their being, of their spirituality, and then like kind of how they interact in the world and how they're able to relate and understand one another?
Yes, great question. So first off, I can't remember which Bible verse it is. I think it's Corinthians. But when I was a child, I spake I spoke as a child, and I was a child, right? So when we're children, our parents will often tell us things that, again, as an adult, from their perspective, it makes complete sense. Like, hey, make sure you turn off the lights when you're not home. And the kid will be like, okay. And the kid, even though the kid understands, right, they can understand to the level of, well, my parents have to work and the electricity costs money, but the full weight of the significance of what they're actually saying, right, is never going to be fully understood as well, right, by that child. you know
Right.
just like if you tell your dog, that your dog has this rule that they always stop before approaching a road, they they will listen to a certain degree of, well, we understand that master, owner, whoever doesn't want us to do this, but they don't understand the full implications of what they're actually getting at. The same thing applies, again, just on every level. Like, we might be able to understand and conceptualize certain parts or bits of certain ideas or concepts, but the full width, breadth, and gravity is often lost upon people who just aren't at that level, right? And I'm the same way. Like, I don't fully, I'm not going to pretend to fully understand Nikola Tesla's work, or the man, or any other person in general, right? Because going back to coherence, the word you used, that it's literally, I can break it down mathematically as well using what we're just talking about today, but it is physically, mathematically impossible for me to understand something the same as you, because I'm not you. So it goes even beyond this whole, like, well, is it intelligence? Is it spiritual evolution? We can really just wipe all that away when we, at the fundamental, realize, which helps with getting the ego out of the way, when we realize that everyone has their own makeup. And so their ability to, this world is perspectives and beliefs from a
Hmm.
shamanistic perspective, that it's true if you want it to be true. So the ability, whether someone's, more enlightened or more intelligent, yes, that plays a role in the matter. But at the base reductionist level, it's just, forgive them for they know not what they do. People just are ignorant because that's where they're at. They're all in their own stages. If I give you an idea as well, and I don't want to sidetrack off this too much, but if I give you an idea, it might not be meant for you to understand it right now. That it might have
Mm.
just been my job to plant it in your consciousness so it could take sprout, a decade later. And in fact, like, when I think about Dr. Royal Rife and right frequency generators and other such practices. I think about how like these brilliant minds came into the earth decades before their time to just plant the seed to where it could germinate until it could actually be readily available and mass.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense as far as, you can hear these things, and I think the universe provides you a lot of those, kind of kernels of wisdom along the way, and as when it first hits your consciousness, odds are you're not really going to understand, the full value of the wisdom or of the lesson, but time will kind of, help to reveal it. So along the lines of, like, kinda everybody has their own experience and perceptions and beliefs, and that kinda impacts the way they interact with others and are able to understand different things that are they're being exposed to. Coming maybe from like a self improvement angle, when we're talking about frequency and vibration, it's kind of like a maybe like the new age or woo woo way of saying like, oh, I got to be high vibes and I want to be like high frequency. And it's often said, the the different frequencies of the different emotions, and like love being up at the top. And you had mentioned authenticity as actually even higher of a vibration than love. So could you talk about maybe ways that people who are looking to improve themselves, improve their outcomes in life, if they're trying to, be more prosperous or abundant or more successful in their endeavors, are there ways to approach that or think about their own frequencies and vibrations on trying to either increase them or adjust them to the circumstances? Like, how do you go about that?
So we talked about this again earlier briefly, but like attracts like, and I know that's conversely opposite attract as well, but which also goes to complementary values contradict each other but coexist nevertheless. But I digress. So if someone wants to attract more opulence and wealth in their life, then first off, resonating with that frequency is in their best interest. Now, what are some ways to do that? One of my favorite ways is within subliminals and morphic fields, because these are different energy signatures. So if someone's listening to a subliminal that says, I am wealthy, I receive cash every day, my business is successful, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I am, or you are, second person of affirmations to their subconscious mind, that then begins to manifest in their conscious reality over time. Again, because 10% conscious mind up here, tip of the iceberg. The rest of the iceberg's under the water, subconscious mind and unconscious mind. But it's still there. The iceberg's still there regardless, whether or not people are aware of it. So those subconscious things then manifest, and that can cause changes. I've seen it within myself and other people many times, of where they've used subliminals and morphic fields to achieve drastic shifts in that way. Another way is to just, well, going back to Tesla, like the 369 method. Um, I've never used this journal, but I've seen great reviews and people talk about the 369 method all the time. But it's this journal of where someone just writes, what they want to manifest. I think it's like 3 in the morning, 6 in the afternoon, and 9 times a night. Because again, Nikola Tesla's favorite number was 369, which I don't know the full scope of whys of that this time, but I can look into that more for the future. But also, but what this fundamentally is doing, again, if someone's constantly writing and affirming something like, I'm rich, I'm wealthy, and again, over time you can reprogram yourself, and then thusly you're going to resonate then with that frequency. But that's also where, again, I know we're bleeding out into a whole bunch of other topics right now, but that's also why music is such a powerful, in art in general, in media. Because if you're watching shows that are depicting, poverty and violence and struggle, if you're listening to music that is celebrating degenerative behaviors, to say the least, then that's going to, over time, that's going to become your frequency, because it's what you're consuming, it's what you're aligning with. And you know you no matter how strong-willed you are, and I'm speaking from experience directly on this, no matter how strong-willed you are, if you are surrounded by certain energies long enough, you will become it. There is no, and it's not a mental fortitude thing. It's none of that. Again, it's just the basic mathematics.
Yeah. Yes, it's interesting. Like as you're kind of talking about this, I'm trying to like wrap my head around it, and it is something that I have been, thinking about for a while. As far as like when I first was exposed to that concept of, an individual having a vibration and having a frequency, and trying to either raise it or whatever, match it to a state that you wanted to be in. And I guess I hadn't thought of it as maybe as directly as like, okay, your subconscious, your mind, your beliefs are kind of that translation device between maybe the external and then the vibration or the frequency that you resonate at. Like it's kind of the tuning mechanism, like on the guitar, it's got
Mhm.
like the key, like is the mind and the subconscious like kind of what tunes that string?
I love the fact that you just brought that up about the musical aspect, because yes, your brain is really quite the receiver and antenna. Although I would argue the entire human body is one walking antenna slash output input device. Because your ability to receive different concepts as well, whether that be a new job, more money, etc., is based upon what you are able to resonate with. If you're not tuned into 44,000 megahertz, you're not going to pick up that transmission. It's just not going to
Mm.
happen. Especially if you don't have the hardware present for that as well, let alone the software. So this is where also physical health is a key point to reaching higher levels of gnosis, which I also
Mm.
learned early in my journey. Not to segue off too much, but like it's critical that when people start getting into manifestation and other practices, they do not deny their physicality, because if you don't have your body in an optimal state of health, you won't be able to transmit or receive higher levels of data, of consciousness.
Yeah, that's something that I only more recently came to truly appreciate, and really with the help of you too, like working with you as a coach, and then work like focusing on my physicality and strength training, and just eating properly and enough enough food. That was a big problem of mine historically. It was like I just wasn't eating enough, and so I wasn't able to have the fuel and like the building blocks to then like grow stronger, both on the mental, physical, spiritual, all the different planes. And actually, just kind of the image popped in my head of I don't know if it was Gandhi who like subsisted off of like 1 grain of rice per day. Like you see a lot of these aesthetics and kind of spiritual seekers kind of dismissing or almost going against like the physical body to then reach these levels of enlightenment. So maybe I had like a misconception that like, oh, the physical body doesn't matter because you got these monks that are living off a grain of rice every day, and then that's like how they're achieving enlightenment. But I guess it's just like kind of different goals, and their goal is maybe not to achieve abundance or wealth in the 3D plane, and maybe more live on this non uh non-material level. Is that kind of accurate
So
way to think about it?
this is where, again, I reference back to how opposites attract, yet like attracts like, and contradictory and complementary values coexist. So what you said is true. Yes, there's many people, and I'm a personal believer in people living chronically, again, eating less and less, denying the physical body. But this also requires a much different sadhana or path of life, right? You, as a housekeeper, husband, and father, for you to do the meditation and the again the work necessary to purify one's physical vessel to get to that state of vibration to live solely off of spirit, it's most likely not feasible. Just there's, and also remember when we first started working there, I told you if you want to make money, you should eat meat. You need to be in that predatory profiting off of others mindset. Just is what it is, right? So someone who is seeking to just be in a samadhi state as often as possible is going through a much different path than others. When I talk about the whole eating well and taking care of the body, that's for your 90%, 95% of the population. Because
Mm.
I would say 99.99% of the population aren't ever going to even consider the idea of giving up food.
All right. Right. Yeah. Fair. Yeah, that makes sense. And how does aura factor into this frequency and vibration? Is that what is vibrating? Is that what is interacting with the external world and with other people?
So I would argue that the physical body is a manifestation of the aura and not the other way around.
Mm,
That again, because again, frequency and vibration. And I talked about energy and matter and how I don't really view them as two separate things. Because whether something is a wave, energy, or matter, a particle, is just a matter of where we capture it in its movement, right? When we see it at the still point in the center, it appears as a particle. And this is the whole like wave particle theory, or Schrodinger's cat. Like, okay, is the cat dead or alive? Well, it just depends on who's observing it and when, you know.
mm,
So going back to the aura and the energy is your aura is also a byproduct, of what your physicality is a byproduct of what you eat, which is going to influence your aura. If someone is doing lots of hard drugs or again drinking alcohol, we talked about this before, putting holes in their aura, putting sludge in it, making it less coherent, they're going to be more vulnerable to attacks. So they're going to resonate with destructive energies also because they are being destructive unto themselves, where someone is giving themselves enough positivity, enough healing and love at a certain point. It's my personal belief that at a certain point, people just stop even dealing with negativity or BS because it just doesn't even resonate with them. And
mm,
you think about the calm, placid state of a monk or a classical Indian Hindu guru. You could probably say whatever you want to Sadhguru, and he would probably just look at you, smile, and then tell a little story and then just laugh about it. And and I know when I first started on this ties into the frequency as well. When I first started in this journey, people like Sadhguru, it seemed like nonsense to me because again, I wasn't even close to their frequency yet. I was still coming out of the trenches of the darkness I was in. So when this guy is saying this and that and the other and just being so, nonchalant about everything, me and my egoic mind in that lower frequency, there's no way I could comprehend this man's compassion and love. It looks foolish. It looks crazy at a certain point, where
mm.
depending on where you're at in the scale of things. But over time, it's like, oh yeah, I can totally see why a monk would just be walking around smiling all the time because they have not a care in the world. They don't have any attachments. They don't have any burdens. They have not shackled themselves to any of the other things that most people have, which bring suffering. Right.
Yeah, and that sounds like a secret of the universe too, to live in a state where external stimuli are not um, impacting your being and your mood and your day. Is that kind of what Tesla you think was getting at it when he said secrets of the universe? Like what kind of other things do you think maybe he had in mind, or that you think of as well when you're thinking of maybe little life hacks or little cracks in the matrix to improve your own experience?
One of the first ones that comes up is rife machines, and of any sort of frequency healing, whether it be tuning forks, rife machines, you know, these alternative, as per the Western model, these alternative therapies that are highly effective because they work at that mathematical level that all is comprised of. Because what I perceive from a lot of Tesla's work is breaking things down to the most basic mathematical scale. Because again, frequency and vibration, we can put numbers, we can attach a number, a numerical value to all these different things. Onyx has a molar mass of this, and thusly we can calculate for what frequency that is. Or we can
Mm,
see what color, purple has a higher frequency compared to red, on the light spectrum. And we can give a numerical value for that. It's breaking down everything within existence to its most fundamental level, which is ones and zeros, binary code, numbers, mathematical.
So it sounds like, again, kind of on that more self improvement path, if you have this goal or desire to be in a state that is different than the one you're in, then it's like, okay, determine what frequency or vibration that goal level is, whether it's surrounding yourself with people that are living the lifestyle that you want to live, like different music that you find to be joyous, like maybe exposing yourself to that more. And then, like, I guess over time, you kind of just slowly change based on these things kind of getting absorbed via
Mhm.
osmosis. Like, is it does meditation on these things kind of help? Like, what are you're mentioning like subliminals and things like that? Like, what are the kind of practices and timelines and approaches people can take?
Wow, there's so many things to come up with this one. So military is a great example of this when we were talking about military magic earlier. But the military is very effective at taking someone at where they're at. There's some pre-work they gotta do, as far as changing their frequency. Okay, we have to have you be able to do X amount of push-ups, pull-ups, run, etc. Make sure you don't have any major health issues. But then completely reforging an individual in the course of, 2 to 3 months, depending on what branch of the military it is. And then obviously, again, as you go further down the pipeline in the military, you get more and more specialized. You resonate more, but you just don't. Again, this goes back to the archetypes thing as well. You just don't all of a sudden know how to operate an M16, an M4, a pistol, dive underwater, and jump out of airplanes and become a Navy SEAL. Like, it's things that you have to, again, work your way up the scale of and resonating with. And on that note, I would urge the audience to just, when they see people out in public, to kind of just, think to themselves, like, I wonder what that person does, for work or for a living, or what kind of hobbies they do, just without intellectually, cognitively analyzing them all, just like off the gut, off the hip, what is your initial assumption about the other person, what they do? Because this is a good way of illustrating that. Again, it all comes down to your vibe attracts your tribe. And again, it's all energetic, because how often do people just know, what someone's about or what they're doing without knowing a single thing about them, but they just know, you know, it comes down to that energetics of things. I,
I guess as you were talking through the like shooting off the hip and trying to guess or illustrate what someone might be doing with their lives and what they might be into. I think it often can shed light on your own belief systems. And I know this was like a big one and maybe still is with me as far as um, super wealthy people, right? And like I always go to like this cynical view of like, oh, they're probably exploiting millions of workers in faraway lands and they're a bad person. Because like maybe it was jealousy or anger that I wasn't in their position, but that'll prevent me. I know that will prevent me from getting there because if I have this belief that wealthy people are bad bad people, I don't want to be a bad person, then I will never allow myself to be wealthy. um so not to dwell on that one too much, but are there ways to kind of like eliminate these biases and self-sabotaging things? Is that where kind of some of the more like music and subliminals on the entrainment, so to speak, going out and trying to reprogram yourself, is that where that comes in?
I feel personally, as far as attacking negative beliefs, that subliminals are in my experience of various works, the most effective tool at reprogramming your consciousness. Period. Um, as far as how much time, because again, it can be a very passive thing. It's not something you need to actively do. It's something you can listen to, and it's going to be working without you even really thinking about it. Whereas, other ways of addressing this, or writing out your affirmations, speaking to yourself like affirming yourself, like, I am wealthy, I use my wealth and power for good, counteracting any sort of negative energy with a more positive energy, and that will shift in time. But yeah, you're absolutely correct. If someone has a negative perception around being muscular men being meatheads and dumb, and then they find themselves muscular, they've reached a crux in the road. Are they going to manifest themselves as an idiot?
Yeah.
Are they going to merge into that state in that timeline? It's up to them.
Yeah. No, I like how you said that before too. It's like the world you perceive around you is based on kind of what you believe. It's like when someone says something bad about themselves, like, okay, like if you say so, like if you believe it to be true, then sure, yeah, it is. It's going to be true. So I think it's important to be aware of your own biases that you bring to
Mhm.
scenarios and bring them to light so that you can either change them or just realize maybe why you're getting the results that you're getting. Um, Maybe to bring us on a little bit of a tangent with Nikola Tesla and energy and the Egyptian pyramids. That was one of my favorite things scrolling through Instagram back when I was addicted to scrolling to scrolling on Instagram. Is like Nikola Tesla knew that the pyramids in Egypt were these basically power plants that were pulling energy from the ether. Do you know anything about that?
So this also ties in well to a future episode on feng shui and the shapes of things and how they affect, you know, the flow of energy in terms of receiving or outputting. But yes, I'm in agreement of what he said, and then you can also look at the different latitudes and longitudes all over the world of different structures and see that there's a grid, there's a pattern to that. I don't know the exact numbers off my top of my head. Uh, I'm not that level of savant, but yes, I believe in that observation, well, again, that belief system. But again, if someone's watching this and they just want to say, well, they're just tombs for kings and queens, and that's also true, right?
Yeah.
There's 144 facets to truth in some ways. And so whichever lens that someone wants to take, that's up to them. But it's my goal, and I know yours as well, that with these alternative methods and understanding of frequencies, that people can fall out or climb out of the trap that they've dug themselves in. You don't have to be in a state of disease. You don't have to be in a state of poverty. You don't have to, you know, it's your life. You can restructure it how you want. And there's plenty of tools, you know, available to go about shifting things and shifting what you attract in your life.
Yeah, no, I love that. The optimistic outlook on that. I think for a lot of the earlier part of my life, I was under the belief system and impression that you're kind of just on this track and there's really not much you can do about it, and you're stuck with this personality, you're stuck with these circumstances. But coming back to the energy and frequency and vibration, there are many ways that you can change your own state to then manifest the type of universe that you wish, that you dream of, that you want to live in. And like you were saying, that's the first time I heard the phrase, the vibe attracts the tribe, and I love that. But yeah, setting your own vibe to then attract others into that universe with you and just make your life that much better is all within your own power. So that's a great optimistic approach, and um, happy that we're on this journey together. And thank you, Nobu, for sharing these ideas with us and guiding us along the way. I just wanted to end in, or maybe a penultimate question. The penultimate question would be, if Nikola Tesla was here right now, what is maybe one thing that you would ask him?
How do you feel about there not being limitless free energy available on planet Earth?
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, basically, I think where he was heading should have been pretty easy to attain.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yep.
very cool. And any other last thoughts you want to leave the audience with on this episode?
Going back to what we said earlier about your subconscious mind being below the iceberg and the conscious being the tip. When things come into your experience that you don't enjoy, remember that it's happening for you to resolve.
Excellent. Thank you again, Nobu, for sharing the words of wisdom and guiding us through this wild and wild and wacky and amazing world we live in. We'll see you all next time. Thanks for listening, everybody.